Thank you everybody for your patience while we're waiting there for a second. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning for anybody that's joining us at 2 a.m. on their side of the world. And thank you so much for being here with us today for the Guesty virtual meetup. Owner loyalty secrets, unlocking success in your vacation rental business, guest experience for increasing profits. Before we get started, I would like to briefly highlight a few reminders. Okay, so don't forget that you're automatically muted. Whilst we can't hear you, you can click on the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen to submit any questions that you might have for our lovely panelists today. Please don't complete as anonymous though, as we would like to respond to all questions that come through in as much detail as possible and may have to follow up with you outside of the webinar. If you'd like to leave early or want to rewatch the session at a later time, we'll be emailing you the recorded event next week. Before we go on though, I'd like to introduce myself, so I'm just not an enigma that's kind of talking to you. My name is Christina Moore. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager here at Guesty and your host / mediator for this webinar. I won't introduce your speakers. I will let them introduce themselves. Let's start with Austin then.
Yeah, fantastic. Hi, everybody. My name is Austin Bernhardt. I'm with the Autohost team, sales and partnership managers. Been with the company now for like two and a half years almost. So a pretty good stint here. Excited to be here.
Yes, I'm Isaac Santos. I'm the co-founder and head of marketing at Cosmo. We started this property management company about 5 years now. So
Amazing. Thank you, guys. So a few additional little pieces. Our session today is running for an hour, in which I will begin sharing some guest insights and then invite our panelists to share their thoughts on our topic today of elevating guest experience for increasing profits. Before concluding with our panel discussion, we will take some audience questions as well. Don't forget to keep asking them through the Q&A box throughout the session. All right. Before we dive into all of that, I wanted to take a minute to introduce Guesty to those of you who are not yet familiar with what we do. At Guesty, we're providing short-term rental hosts and property management companies with the tool they need to operate more efficiently, bring in more bookings, and ultimately grow their business. As you can see there on the slide, we were founded in 2013, since which we have received $170 million worth of funding. And we operate out of 15 offices, including one locally here in Sydney. And out of those 15 offices, we service customers in 80 countries worldwide, which is pretty awesome. In order to do this, we do have two unique offerings. Okay, so there's Guesty for Pros and there's Guesty for Hosts. Each of these platforms is tailored to different types of rental managers who work with properties ranging from personally owned vacation rentals all the way up to enterprise property management companies. Both platforms are powered by our 200 or so R&D team members, ensuring all of our users are provided with the most innovative and cutting-edge solutions available on the market. So now, no matter how many properties you manage, what your goals are, or whether you're just getting started, or actually are already a full-time professional property manager within Guesty, we have a solution that is perfectly suited for you and all of your needs. Amazing. So with that being all said, we can actually kick off our panel discussion. Please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A section, as mentioned earlier, located on the bottom part of your screen. What I will do now is I'll actually stop sharing my screen. Okay, you don't have to look at slides. It's not death by PowerPoint here today. And we'll get started with some of those questions. So bear with me as I bring those up on our end. in light, of just a bit of a warm up, to give our panelists a bit of a warm up, I would like to kind of start with maybe asking each of them to share with us what the biggest success of 2023 has with them. So maybe Austin, you'd like to take the floor and tell us about your successes.
Yeah, of course. So we've been at Autohost. We've had a really exciting year. We also, not as big of a funding round as Guesty had this year, but we also got some funding. So it's been a big hiring and leveling up, able to offer a lot more of auto services and everything. Moving into a new role at the company, into sales and partnerships has been, I think, the biggest success for the year, at least for me, in my opinion. It's been great.
Amazing. And Isaac, yourself?
It's great, Austin. I think Cosmo's biggest success this year would primarily be launching our own booking platform in line with the industry. And with that and the help of Autohost and a few other tech platforms that are integrated with Guesty, we've been able to expand our service offerings Australia-wide, which is great news for everyone in the team.
Pretty impressive. It's good to be able to conquer all of Australia. With that being said, Isaac, I do have another question for you here. Actually, have a few coming up for you. One to kind of start off with is, how quick was it for you to set up Guesty when you joined?
In terms of Guesty and Autohost, it was really easy actually. There was about 3 sessions with me and Autohost. We could have done it in 1 or 2, but in terms of actually integrating everything in, very easy. It took about half an hour to sync everything in through the Guesty and Autohost API. So that was very helpful, because that was my main concern, integrating something into a completely new system when you have thousands of existing bookings. But Autohost and Guesty were able to fix that very easily, which is great.
That's incredible. And I mean, can you comment on the instant value or benefit that I guess the guest screenings had for you once you did implement it?
Absolutely. I think mainly our team support team who are seeing the guests come through, and our finance team who are controlling all the money. We're really seeing an added instant benefit. For example, one of them is the chargebacks that are not happening anymore. So we're getting about 3 chargebacks a month. And as you can imagine, that could be worth thousands of dollars. So since we started Autohost, we've actually had no chargebacks, which is great news. Our finance team and guest support team love that for the team. So it's great.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know from my experiences, at least talking to companies like yourself, chargebacks tend to be a bit of a killer, especially in this market. But we established obviously chargebacks here are an issue. With alongside that, what were the big issues that Cosmo were looking to solve when you chose Guesty and Autohost individually and together, I guess?
Well, I'll start with Guesty, because obviously we've been using Guesty since we started the business. For Guesty, we just wanted something that we could easily integrate with a lot of other tech platforms, which Guesty was leading in that front, as well as expand. So obviously when we started, we had only 5 properties, but we were kind of looking into the future. We knew that we wanted to have more than 5 properties. We wanted to manage hundreds, and Guesty looked like they could service that, and they could service our expansion, which they proved to very well. So it's a great choice by us, and best leading platform in my opinion.
That's actually such a great point too, because Autohost, we work with lots of different property management companies, and how often property management companies are moving PMSs to figure out which one's going to work and scale and grow with them. The fact that I didn't even realize that, Isaac, that you started with Guesty from day one, and you've been able to scale your business with Guesty. That's a big plus, because I bet there's a lot of listeners right now that are really considering which PMS to go through. And I'm super happy to hear, Isaac, that you've never had to do a PMS swap because they are terrible. It's a lot of work. So picking correctly at the start of all this, that's a huge plus.
Yeah, I agree.
And we love a growing customer. You tend to see, especially, you know, for myself as a customer success manager, we tend to see that growth quite a bit. I say people kind of, you know, get to that fork on the road as to whether they make this decision or that decision. And we also love being part of that journey with you. Speaking of experiences of clients, etc., Austin, can you share any anecdotes or bad experiences your clients have had in their properties due to bad guests before using Autohost?
Oh, yeah. I could take up the entire time talking about those things. The one that pops into my mind that I think really resonated for me right when I kind of started with Autohost, or at least getting a feel for the product. We had a customer that I think they're also on Guesty. They were in the States, but they were dealing with pretty much a fraud ring. They had like organized crime booking reservations for some sort of nefarious stuff, drugs, gun deals, things like that. And they were just getting killed on chargebacks. Like you mentioned, Isaac, like you said, you had around 3. I think they had like maybe like 10 each month. They were, you know, dying. They get started with Autohost, and within the onboarding, like the like week that they got up and running, we were able to eradicate that fraud ring from their bookings, because with the digital fingerprinting that we're able to do, we're able to identify that like they had a pattern that they were doing, and we're able to systematically pick out which ones were part of that fraud ring, and cancel those bookings before they could do the damage, and you know, all the extra work that goes into fighting chargebacks, getting the units back up to par to rent again. It's a nightmare, as most listeners will probably know that a little bit.
Wow, and I guess a lot of this information that you're collecting on that digital, journey and footprint, do you have a way to send that information of those bad guests to our fellow OTAs or property management softwares like Guesty?
Yeah, so definitely to Guesty users, there's going to be certain tags or like links that are making sure that, you know, the property management companies are understanding which bookings are verified and which guests have gone through the flow. When it comes to actually sending this information off to the OTAs, this is, I guess, the reason why we kind of exist, Autohost, is because these OTAs, for the most part, don't do much for guest screening, or they don't really care really for guest screening. I'll give it to Airbnb, shout out to them, is that they are doing at least something. But the problem, of course, is property management companies, they don't have visibility or control into who they're letting into their properties. They have to blindly trust the OTAs that they have to, you know, verify. And it's a lot of power that we're putting into the hands of another company that is not your own. You know, who has your best interests at heart? Probably your own company. So giving that visibility control back to our users, I think that's a huge plus that we're able to offer.
Amazing. And I mean, I think also from my experience, users are definitely changing the way that they're looking at the risk profile of guests, or trying to embed more operations within their day-to-day to ensure that they are vetting out the guests that, you know, one issue being chargebacks, another being, you know, that would cause more damage to their property, or extra cleans. And of course, those little bits and pieces really, really affect how smoothly things go, especially if it's in a higher season throughout that time. So I think it's good to kind of see that there is solutions out in the market that have already targeted that. And, you know, when a lot of my clients need that, you know, one up on their operations than they have been doing, they have that option. It's not a dead end for them. I think a lot of people are very weary, and just today I've had 2 conversations about how people are collecting the security deposits, how they're going to make sure that they're doing that. And aside from that is also balancing the owners. The owners at the moment are quite sensitive when it comes to and increase in interest rates in a lot of areas in the world, and wanting to earn extra income, while at the same time, especially with the more luxury segment of properties, owners are very wary about their furniture and the belongings and the wear and tear that maybe comes with having guests that are maybe a little less respectful of that rental. But I love to hear those stories where, we're seeing those things, at least even to start with the chargebacks and fraud rings, stuff like that, get reduced. Because I really, truly believe that that's what our customers are after.
Yeah, 100%. Isaac, what about you? What's your horror story, or that one thing that you kind of think of?
Well, we actually have most of our horror stories in Metro Melbourne, actually. When we first did our expansion to that big, large city in Victoria, there was a lot of international guests who would come in, but they were actually local. So they would have an international name, they would have an international license, and sometimes they would send us a fraud license, and we didn't really have the correct systems like Autohost does to verify those identification documents. So we had about, this year alone, we've probably had 20 lost keys. So the guests would just take the keys and not return them. And you can imagine how much time and effort that takes us to cancel the fobs of these apartments, change the locks of the keys, organize all these. And then it's lost revenue for our owners as well, because we have to close down the property for 3 weeks. So just on that front alone, I think it's given our owners a lot more confidence that we can actually start taking those direct bookings, and we can start marketing more on booking.com and VRBO, where there's little to no guest verification, because Autohost has provided this system where you can even see the geolocation of locals. That's another problem we're seeing. So we see a Melbourne local live 20 minutes down the road from the property, and they just want to throw a party, or they just want to access the apartment and steal people's things in the lockers or the mail rooms, etc. So just seeing the geolocations and making sure that they're actually there for a holiday, not just for a party. That's one of the most powerful things we've kind of got from Autohost.
That's great. And have you actually caught, through Autohost, I guess, caught any scary guests or prevented any additional chargebacks on top of that?
I wouldn't say we've caught scary guests, but we have caught malicious guests. So how I said before, we had about 10 chargebacks or fraud guests or lost keys. Those stop right as the guest clicks the verification link that Autohost sends out. So we send that link out, they click on it, and you can actually see the digital footprint of where they stop. So they stop right where it says the ID verification. So once they have to upload their ID and verify their face, they're like, oh yeah, we've had enough, and Autohost flags that they haven't verified their account, and then we can cancel the reservation straight away early on, so that we can free up the calendar for more potential bookings, which is very important to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And are there any other day-to-day activities that you've been using with Autohost and Guesty that you'd provide as advice, I guess, to give to most people using that connection?
The advice I'd give to users who are thinking of integrating with Autohost, who have just started with Autohost, is just use the platform and use every single feature they have. Because we started out and we were like, okay, let's automatically verify Airbnb guests or automatically verify green rated guests. And sometimes things can slip through the cracks. So my most important advice is to just use all Autohost features and listen to your account manager. I think that's the most important thing.
That's too
Our
funny.
managers are wise.
Yeah, right. Sage advice. And I think a really cool point, Isaac, that you mentioned as well, when it comes to the owner side of things as well, is how important it is these days, when especially like in this, economy where interest rates like are going up, and everyone's properties are really their livelihoods, right? Like their fallback, and they want to really make sure that they're protecting these properties. So when you're going up to new owners, knocking on their door saying, hey, I know you're going to make some money in this industry if you get a short-term, if you start using this property as a short-term rental, but why you should choose Cosmo is because we actually are able to understand risk and prevent it through the Autohost, and make it super easy through the Guesty platform to deliver that experience. Because I bet a lot of listeners, they get those type of questions all the time. Hey, how are you going to protect my property? How are you going to keep my livelihood from damage? And they're like, and most of the time it's like, yeah, we screen guests, we do that, no problem. And it's kind of falls flat, right? Once you have an Autohost in place, or a clear direction and picture of how you want to screen and vet a guest, you can show this and really win over property managers that really were hesitant from the get-go.
Or even ones that are looking at competition, right? Because if they've had experiences with fraudulent guests, and that's just been the trigger point for them to look elsewhere, that's a good way to think about it. And can I ask, is there a process of actually quantifying this to existing owners and to new potential owners, to say like, these are the amount of people that come through and this is the amount of people that we stop? Is that something you guys share, or is it something that you kind of keep internally, know the data, and kind of pull it out from the tool belt when needed?
We definitely have a good understanding of where the fraud is happening, and I think a lot of property management companies and people that have been in the industry, it's pretty inherent. What's going to be risky, like the last minute bookings, the local guests, like Isaac you mentioned. Everyone has a strong idea of how to manage their own risk. The problem is when you're looking to scale that risk. So bringing statistics to property owners, saying, hey, we're looking at your industry, or this region, we're seeing around 5% of general guests that you want to be taking a look at for certain reasons, of course. Some will call friendly fraud, so little things like parties, or rule compliance. Those are the things that kind of slow down the business, that are inefficiencies, because your teams have to jump in and fix things. Maintenance staff have to be called in, cleaning staff to stay extra long hours just to get the place up to a certain level. These are all things that will slowly pull revenue off of the bottom line. So when you do have these guest screening practices in place, and you start seeing better behaved guests, that's a big game changer for a lot of our customers.
Absolutely, and I'll touch on the expansion part that you talked about before. And I think the main thing that we've learned as a business running for 5 years now is that we need to take as much human intervention or manual processes out of the day-to-day guest screening, etc. So I think with Autohost, instead of having our guest support team spend 10 minutes on one guest to verify guests and to ask them questions and make sure they're actually a real guest with real intentions, we can just look on Autohost, and they give us all the information just by reading a little form and reviewing them in Autohost, and the Autohost dashboard. So that saves a lot of time, and it's easier for us and saves a lot of time for our team. So
that's awesome.
That's great. And
we got a question. Sina, do you see this?
I guess I'll start with you, Austin, here, and Isaac, please feel free to touch more on that. Is fraud in Australia, what do you see are the issues that we're facing?
Fraud in Australia, that would, I think I've touched on this a little bit, but I'll expand on that. I think it's more the part where, someone can steal someone's credit card or someone's identity, and they use someone else's credit card to pay for the reservation. And prior to Autohost, we couldn't see the name on that credit card. We could only see the last four digits on Booking.com. So I think it's more the fraud guests of not having the right name match the credit card or things like that. So just someone not really having the real name on there, which is a really big problem with Booking.com, as I know many property management companies face.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that actually works really well. So I think in the Q&A, I see a question that's kind of directly talking about, credit cards and Booking.com. So from David Graham, I'll just read it out just so everyone can hear. So are you able to vet the credit cards that come directly from Booking.com? As when the credit card is supplied directly from Booking.com, we want to directly, we can't put this through 3D secure checking. So just like Isaac, you mentioned, collecting that credit card information through Autohost is super important. And even though Booking.com is now the, merchant of record usually for these transactions, this is the same reason why Airbnb, like you mentioned, you still vet Airbnb, and a lot of our customers vet Airbnb guests, is even if the OTA is the merchant of record, it's still the property management company that's to deal with the issues that happen. So there's been multiple times when Autohost is able to catch a fraudulent booking that the OTA does not catch and avoid the problem altogether. So that's the other thing too, when we're talking about fraud in Australia. Booking.com does very well in Australia for market share, right, compared to North America, for example. And notoriously, Booking.com does have a bit riskier guests and holds a bit more risk. A lot of value when it comes to occupancy rates and really filling up those dates. But it can be scary and a lot of anxiety determining, is this guest that I'm getting in going to cause me a problem? And that's really a big thing that Autohost is able to do is identify the risky ones and still let the good guests in that are going to just give you money, create straight revenue into your pockets there. So when it comes to vetting credit cards that are coming directly from Booking.com, I highly recommend you still do that, because we're going to add a lot more context to that credit card than just Booking.com is able to process.
Thanks for that, Austin. I think we've already touched on this, but if there's anything that you'd like to add in, in the guest verification strategies, or elaborate, I guess, on that even further, please do so. But I feel like you've touched on it quite a bit. So unless there's anything you wanted to add.
I don't know, Isaac, anything like guest screening strategy? Maybe this is also kind of a change to that question is, comparing what you did, Isaac, before you had Autohost, that can definitely help illuminate some of the, ways that guest screening can improve the flow and help grow and scale businesses.
Yeah, so our guest screening strategy was more of a manual process. As I said before, if there was a guest that we thought that was a fraud guest, we would have to go through that manual process of either calling them, sending the Guesty check-in form to the guest, which we did through for every single booking besides Airbnb. But I don't think Guesty was, fully built up to, prevent things, and they didn't really invest money because, people like Autohost are offering that service. So we had a bit of a guest screening strategy and process, but even then, looking back at that, there would be people who would upload their government ID or just a random photo from Google, and we wouldn't get notified unless we actually went through to the filled in form and actually checked it. So, people can say, and property management companies can say they have a process in place to screen the guests. And yes, they might, but I think it takes a lot of time unless you have someone like Autohost or someone similar in that field. So.
Thank you. I can see we've got a follow-up question also from David Graham. Photo ID meeting international requirements for the cancellation and storage. Does Autohost meet these requirements?
Oh, like privacy, and yeah, I think that's kind of where we were going. So yes, that's a big thing. Why a lot of times having a photo ID through Autohost is a fantastic way, because yeah, you need to have that ID on file, and at times different OTAs like Airbnb, for example, they might collect the ID on your guest, but you never get to see it. So having that and owning that data is super helpful when you are looking at those cancellation and any sort of disputes that might happen with your guests. And of course, when it comes to storage, data regency laws, those things, Autohost is definitely compliant with. We're an international company. We have customers all over the world, and making sure that, yeah, Australian data is kept on Australian soil.
Thank you for that, Austin. Look, I think we're going to go into more of a section of talking about where the short-term rental market is moving and how regulations are impacting that. Austin, for you, the growth and potential in Australia, where do you actually see the short-term rental market moving from your lens?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, of course, I'm definitely the outsider here, but looking at the Australian market from an objective lens outside of the country, we definitely see a huge growth in it. Australia's always been a fantastic destination for international travelers, and it's always been a bit more of like a silo in that sense, where a lot of times you're getting a lot of local guests or guests in Southeast Asia coming to visit, Europeans as well, and of course you get your North American guests, but we are seeing a big uptick in those types of travel. So I think seeing really where it's going to go, it's still, for me at least, left to decide, because we have lots of customers in Australia. We see a lot more push and ask for guest screening in the industry, in the Australian market. So I think soon we'll see definitely some regulations coming into effect. I'm probably jumping the gun a little bit here, but yeah, I think for the most part it's very exciting possibility of where the industry is going here.
Thanks. And Isaac, I guess from your lens, you're feeling it also on the ground, and how the short-term rental market moving in real time. I also, like you also touched a little bit earlier on how previously, prior to Autohost, you also had to change over fobs, and I can't imagine also that helped with strata and body corporates and stuff like that. So if you could just touch on a little bit more about the short-term rental market move, and of course how regulations are actually impacting you guys.
So in terms of regulations, unfortunately, there's not many regulations where we mainly operate in Victoria, besides the 7.5% tax that will be implemented in 2025. But yeah, we have a long time till then. But in terms of where the short-term rental market is moving, in my opinion, I think a lot of property managers are moving towards more direct bookings. So having the systems and the technology and the processes to facilitate the direct bookings is very important, especially now that we're seeing a lot more supply of Airbnb as it becomes more popular. I was looking at some data the other day. In Melbourne, 2-bedroom apartments has doubled from what it was last year in terms of offerings. So if property management companies or singular owners or people like us can find a differentiator in the market and, you know, offer something better than everyone else, like Autohost, like using Guesty and all their integrations is very important. So I think for people like me, I think staying ahead of the curve in terms of technology and processes is mostly important for us.
That's a really good point too. Is how the Australian market is changing is the adoption of technology. Is really taking it from, you know, hey, here's, you know, your keys versus automated door locks, and really leveling up the back end processes with automation technologies, revenue management, all fun things like that. That's definitely a big you know, aspect of the growth of the Australian market that we're definitely seeing.
Absolutely. I also just wanted to touch on our Q&A little bubble there. We also do have a question from Christy. I think it is for Autohost. Have you had any pushback from customers who already have had a great Airbnb rating and provided all the information for verified ID, then have to do it all again?
Yeah, no, fantastic. When it comes to Airbnb, when you're creating your reservation, or excuse me, your account, that's the first and only time that you're actually asked to plug in your ID and possibly a selfie. It's kind of a mystery on when they ask for it. There's been evidence that there is some sort of, you know, age restriction. If you're at a, you know, past a certain age, they just won't ask you for that information. So the fact for Christy's question is, we don't really know if an ID has been technically verified or not on Airbnb. They might tell you it has, but it might not actually be on file. And each time your guest is coming to stay with you, that risk is changing. So think of a guest that you know, is coming for the first time to stay with you. They booked an Airbnb. It's just them. It's just the family of four. 3 months later, they book again, but it's actually a bachelor party that they're coming with. It's the same person that booked with you, but now they're coming with a different party. These have much, you know, different inherent risk. But once you do have that guest's ID on file and they are returning guests, and you have that in Autohost already, then yeah, we can make sure that that guest does not have to submit that ID each time that they're returning.
And I'll touch on that question as well, because when we first integrated with Autohost, we were getting a few pushbacks from guests who are already verified on Airbnb, and they're like, "Hey, why am I uploading my ID to another platform?" And you know, if there is if they do complain, or if they don't really feel comfortable and you're comfortable, you've read the reviews of the guest, you can always turn it off in Autohost just to keep them happy. I wouldn't really recommend it, but the option is there. So you can just go into the reservation, disable the ID verification section, Autohost, which I really like. So you can kind of isolate the verification portal just for that singular guest without turning it off for the entire portfolio, which I found very useful.
Thank you for that. And I think also from my perspective, like actually using like Guesty saved replies, right? So even if you have, I guess not a rebuttal, probably not the right word, but a general response that you do actually want to provide to your guests when they do have a pushback as to the reason why you collect that information. You know, it's not all, but it's the few that make you have these policies kind of be in place. And I guess from my experience, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, a lot of the times those that resist are the ones that kind of get flagged up, especially with what I see with my clients when they go, "Well, I had a gut instinct," because they said they didn't want to send me their driver's license, or they were sending it with a delay until I didn't send the check-in instructions, or whatever it may be. So maybe them asking that question is already something to kind of think about, because realistically, how long does it take us to upload an ID?
Yeah, really good point as well. Like kind of took the words right out of my mouth. Is yeah, at times when you do see people complaining or pushing back on collecting and verifying themselves, it's probably because they don't want to go through that flow. But of course, yeah, like if you're talking to a guest that's 80 years old or something, I'm just coming to the city for my grandson's graduation. I don't even have a phone. It's like, how are you going to go through this flow? You've talked to them, you're totally fine. You push them through the flow, just like Isaac mentioned. That's a very easy way to do it.
And I guess it's also part of like managing the risk in the short-term rental industry. We do have, as property managers, there's a responsibility that you have to your guest, to yourselves, and of course to your owners. So part of that, they're not going to have anywhere to stay if the owners are getting bad experiences and taking their properties off the short-term rental market. So I think managing those risks alongside with some other factors can definitely assist, including, if we think along the lines of, making sure owners have insurance, making sure that we're communicating our operations to them to provide them that security, and how we're managing the risk of, for some people, not for some, for all people, pretty much a very prized possession, a very expensive possession. But Isaac, from your perspective, how are you managing risk, I guess, in the short-term rental industry, and how are you balancing that with your owners and guests?
In terms of managing risk, I would say Autohost has really helped in that front, because they have 4 levels of risk, as Austin can probably touch on. So there's green, yellow, orange, and red. So that's really a really good indicator, and property managers who are using Autohost should really listen to that data that Autohost does send us, because 99.9% of the time it's correct. So just managing the risk and looking at the data that Autohost sends us and the recommendations that Autohost sends, to see, the geolocation is only 20 kilometers from the property, or this guest had 4 chargebacks in the last 1 year or something like that. So just listening to the data and actually going ahead and canceling, or doing whatever you need to do to kind of move that guest on, or set up some extra parameters to host that guest under scrutiny and watching them closely. So
Thank you for that. Right. And what about from your perspective, Austin? Do you find that as you're talking to operators, or as kind of you're seeing it in the industry, the impact that Autohost has in managing that risk in the short-term rental industry being at the core, or is there other elements that you're actually finding that you're having in your conversations?
Yeah, I think when it comes to risk management and how to really manage it on a scale, like I mentioned earlier, is all of us on this call here, we understand the inherent risks of certain types of bookings. If we're looking at one, we can determine, pretty quickly, I want to do a little bit deeper dive into this guest. The problem always is the scaling of that. When you're moving from 25 properties to 50 to 100 to 200 to even more, it becomes, even if it takes 5 minutes to go through a booking to manually verify or look through the information, that's 5 minutes too much that your team is going into. So I think taking the platform, the Autohost platform, and using the integration with Guesty to automate your risk appetite, I think is such a powerful thing that's mostly overlooked in this industry. Most property management companies are looking, okay, I just need to verify this guest. I want to verify their credit card. I want to take a security deposit. They're thinking of these individual pieces that they want to have in part of their flow. But when you actually start looking, it's like, okay, I don't want to host guests that are 25, that are local to the stay, and they booked on the weekend. If those 3 things happen, I want to be notified. boom, that's something you can build in Autohost with a quick business rule, and making sure that your team's eyes are only on the bookings that are most important to you. The rest, you can wipe your hands of, because they're going to have a great guest experience. You have that peace of mind that you've done the work to verify that guest, and you have a good guest in your place. And the worst case that happens is something does go wrong, because there's no silver bullet. I'm not saying you'll never have a problem again, but you now have a full-fledged risk profile on that guest to use for any sort of dispute or conflict that might happen.
Thank you. And actually, to expand on what you've just said, I do have quite a few clients that still, instead of them vetting the guests, the owners insist that the owners actually vet those guests, and it prolongs that process, and it's a very heavy guest experience. So on that note, can you set those business rules to be on per listing, so that the owners could go, well, I want to make sure it's this, this, and this, and this, and you're setting on a listing level and saying, well, instead of me having to reach out to you and you respond to me 24 hours later, in the meantime, I could have potentially lost that booking, things like that. Could that be completely automated via Autohost as well?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never heard that actual owners are wanting to do their own vetting. But yes, you can pretty much say, if you have one of your owners that's quite stringent, and they have, I want to have a criminal background check on every guest that's coming into my place. I don't care. I'll pay for it. I just want that. No problem. We can set that up in Autohost. Another really cool thing Autohost can do is you can give like a login access to your property owner. Let's just say they have 5 properties, that you're managing of theirs. You can set up a business view where they can see just those 5 properties and which guests are coming in. They don't really get to decide on who it is. They're going to trust that Autohost is doing it, but at least they have that visibility and that peace of mind that this work is being done for them. So I think that's another really powerful, way to make sure that your property owners are happy and taken care of.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely be sending some people your way then. That's for sure. Thank you so much. That's actually all the questions that I had on our end. Any participants, if there's any final questions that you guys are having, now is your chance. Please pop them in that Q&A box, and Isaac and Austin can answer them for you. If not, it's been an absolute pleasure. Firstly, I want to say thank you so much to Austin for staying up. It's currently almost 3 a.m. over there, so shucks to you. And Isaac, thank you so much for joining us, providing all your valuable feedback, and allowing us to see you guys grow, and of course adopting Autohost along that way. So really appreciating that. Awesome.
Yeah. And the one last thing I'll say first, and this is just more of a fun comment, when you're going through all the benefits of Guesty in the slides, I think the one thing you should have written there is how Guesty throws the best parties, the Guesty Vals. So Isaac and I actually met at one of the Guesty Vals in Austin, Texas, in the States. And if any users are part of Guesty and can make the trip out to the next Guesty Val, I highly recommend it. I think they're some of the best user conferences out there.
Yeah, what can we say? We know how to be matchmakers and party throwers and goers. We do have another question about costs associated with Autohost. Austin, did you want to address that in the webinar? Do you want to reach out to Rick outside of this with some?
We got a couple minutes, right? I can chat about it.
We definitely do, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, no, it's a great question. When it comes to Autohost, we can price out it in very different ways. We can either do like a per listing rate, so a monthly flat rate that we kind of cover all your reservations that happen in that month, or we can do it on a per reservation basis. Really, the goal is to make sure you're paying the least you can for Autohost, because then you'll probably use us more often and for longer. So it all depends on the portfolio size and then the frequency of reservations. But really, the goal is to get it down to around $2 to $3 US per verification, give or take the frequency of things. At least for
And I should add, like, at the end of the day, you know, if it saves you one chargeback a month and that chargeback was $4,000, if your Autohost bill is anything less than that, it's already covered itself. So whilst pricing is important, I think definitely when you are thinking about it, think about what your current pain points are and how many, for example, chargebacks you're getting, or how many extra conversations you're having with owners because they weren't happy with the state, that maybe the property was left a couple of times, etc.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. I've had customers that have come to me like, Austin, like we've had $50,000 worth of chargebacks like this month. It's like, what can you do? It's like, okay, if we're able to reduce those by 92%, that'd be help. And like, Isaac, you are on Stripe. Do you use like your entire, oh gosh, what is that? Did you see that? There's been balloons.
It's
Sorry,
a Guesty
yeah, it's a Guesty party. But yeah, no, I know Stripe is super important, and Stripe can be very stringent with chargebacks. If you get to a certain chargeback percentage of your transactions, they'll just cut you off of Stripe, and that can be debilitating if your payment processing system is kind of taken away from you. So a lot of our customers will come to us when they're on the brink of losing their Stripe access and get themselves back into good standing. That's a really big thing.
I'm glad we haven't gotten to that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really good to know. We've gotten Autohost ahead and kind of mitigated those risks from ever happening. So it's great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I think we'll wrap up here for 6 minutes early. Get you an earlier bedtime, Austin, and get you an earlier afternoon there, Isaac. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody that's part of our audience. It was our pleasure. Reminder that you will also receive a recording of this if there was something you missed. Don't stress, you'll be able to wind it back and have another listen.
Fantastic.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks so much.